Have you ever been good at something you did not actually want to keep doing? I mean, really good at it. People praised you for it, they depended on you for it, they may have even paid you well for it. And because you performed it with excellence, everybody assumed that you must be where you belong. But somewhere you knew you could do it, but you weren't sure you were supposed to keep doing it. Maybe you're the person who always knows how to fix a crisis, the person who keeps everybody calm, the person who organizes the event, leads the team, sings the song, solves the problem, manages the money, teaches the lesson, or carries the family. And that sounds like Big Mama. And because you do it well, people keep handing it back to you again and again and again. Until one day, your gift begins to feel less like a gift and more like a sentence. Because what happens when the thing everybody celebrates about you is not the whole of who you are? What happens when your competence keeps you trapped in a role your spirit has already outgrown? What happens when people need you somewhere God is trying to move you away from? And how do you know the difference between a talent, a responsibility, a survival skill, a season, and an actual calling? Hey y'all, welcome to the Why Podcast, where why is always the question. I'm your girl, I'm your host, Celeste Frey, and I'm happy to be here with y'all. So let's chat. Because today's why is why being good at something doesn't mean it's your calling. Because ability answers one question: can I do this well? Calling asks a completely different question: am I meant to steward myself here for this purpose in this season? And those questions can overlap. Sometimes the thing you're good at is absolutely connected to your calling, but sometimes it isn't. Sometimes you're good at something because you were trained to do it. Sometimes you became good at it because people rewarded you for it. And sometimes you became good at it because you had no choice. Sometimes you learn how to perform under pressure because your childhood required it. And maybe you learn how to read the room because staying safe depended on it. Maybe you became strong, the strong one in the family, because nobody gave you permission to fall apart. Raise your hand if that sounds like you. That ability may be real. It may be useful. It may even bless people, but that does not automatically mean it's supposed to define the rest of your life. So let's get into these 8 points that I got with y'all. Start with number 1. Talent is a clue, not a conclusion. Being good at something may be evidence of calling, but it's not the entire discernment. Talent matters, ability matters, opportunity matters. We don't have to pretend practical skill has nothing to do with purpose. If you have a natural gift for teaching and communicating, organizing, building and creating, even counseling, writing, singing, leading, or solving problems, that is definitely worth paying attention to. But a clue is not a conclusion. Just because you can do something does not mean you are required to build your whole identity around it. That is where many of us get stuck. We think calling should be obvious because we're only looking at performance. What am I good at? What do people compliment me on? What comes easily? Now, those are useful questions, but they aren't enough. Because some things come easily because you have practiced them for 20 years. And some things come easily because you learned them while surviving. Some things come easily because your environment never allowed you to explore anything else. And sometimes they come easy because you are genuinely gifted and called to use that gift in a particular way. Discernment requires you to look beyond the ability itself. Psychologist Ryan Duffy has spent years studying how people experience work as a calling. Research in this area generally finds that people who view their work as meaningful or connected to a calling often report greater engagement, purpose, satisfaction, and flourishing. But notice something important. Calling is usually defined by meaning, contribution, identity, or service, not merely skill. Being skilled can help you fulfill a calling, but being skilled does not automatically tell you where, how, why, or for how long that skill should be used. How many of us came from the dot-com era when it was all about computers coming online for the internet, and now we're in an AI information era and social media era, so it's completely different. See, you may be a strong communicator. That does not tell you whether you are called to preach, teach, write, lead a company, advocate for children, host a podcast, or have difficult conversations inside your own family. The gift may be communication. The assignment gives the gift direction. That distinction matters. Because when we mistake the gift for the assignment, we may start believing every opportunity to use the gift is ours to accept, and it isn't. Every open door is not your door. Every invitation is not an instruction, and every chance to perform is not a calling. Sometimes it's simply an opportunity you're capable of handling. I know I had those situations, but for me, I always decided to follow whatever God told me to do. I'm great at communicating. I always was going to be work for a company. Gosh, I can't even remember the role, but to hire, I don't know why my brain went beep. I wanted to recruiter, but you have to ask more. Can I do this? You also have to ask, why am I doing this? Who is this serving? What is this producing? Is this where I am supposed to be right now? I had some of those questions, which is why when God told me, you can go in there, you can do this, and you can get it, but it's not what I want for you. And I turned around and I walked away. See, because ability tells you what you can carry. Calling helps you discern what you should carry, which brings me to my next point. Praise can reveal a gift or build a cage. Other people's praise can clarify your gifts, but it can also confine you. We naturally repeat what gets rewarded. If people applaud you for singing, you keep singing. If people praise you for being responsible, you keep handling everything. If your employer promotes you because you're good at managing problems, you keep managing the problems. And if your family celebrates you for being the peacemaker, well, you are the one that keeps smoothing over the conflict then. Praise feels good. Recognition feels good. Money feels good. And being trusted definitely feels good. And there's nothing wrong with appreciation. But positive reinforcement is powerful. When people repeatedly reward a behavior, we begin connecting that behavior to our identity. I'm the organized one. I'm the strong one. I'm the talented one. Or I'm the problem solver. Really? Maybe we have the one that everybody calls, right? Because they have all the answers. And eventually we stop asking whether the role still fits. We assume they keep choosing me, so this must be where I belong. But people often choose you based on what makes their lives easier. That's not always the same as what God is calling you to do. Let me say that again, because people may call you what you need to be. Your family may need a mediator, and your workplace may need someone who never says no. Your church may even need a dependable volunteer that's always there. Your friend may need a free therapist, so she ain't gonna go to one. Your business is gonna need you to keep performing a function that you've already outgrown. We're automating these days. And because you are good at it, everybody has an argument for why you should stay. But nobody does it like you. We really need you. You've always handled this. What are we going to do if you leave? Now you feel guilty. I'm sorry for the voices. Like, that's what I hear in my head. Because see, leaving does not feel like changing roles. It feels like abandoning people. But other people's dependence is not proof of divine direction. Sometimes people need you because you have trained them to believe you will always be available, which is not the case. Sometimes they need you because they have not developed their own abilities. And sometimes they need you because the system benefits from your overfunctioning. Like they genuinely need you, but the season has ended. This makes me think of My baby sister, I was her voice when we were growing up all the time. And as adults, I'd outgrown needing to still be her voice, but she would still call on me. And I became a crutch to her. And I felt so bad for being one because I felt like it took something from her, from developing her own abilities to honestly stand up for herself and not just agree when she didn't really want to. And we spoke about it in detail when we became adults. See, need does not automatically equal calling. Christ encountered legitimate need everywhere he went. He still withdrew. He still moved on. He still said no to certain expectations. He followed the Father's direction instead of remaining wherever people demanded his presence. That challenges us because many of us are not staying because we feel called. We're staying because we do not know how to disappoint people. I personally move when God tells me to move. He sees within me what I may not have seen within myself, and I always choose to obey his orders because I know he knows best. I do it nervous and afraid, but not in fear, because my faith won't allow me to do it any other way. Praise should be information. It should not become a prison. Let people's observations help you identify your gifts, but do not allow applause to make your decisions for you, because the crowd may celebrate a version of you that God is no longer asking you to remain. For my next point, some of your greatest skills were built for survival. It's important, especially for anybody who grew up in instability. Some of the things you are best at may have begun as survival adaptations. I know mine have. You may be excellent at reading people because you had to know what mood an adult was in before you entered the room. You may be good at calming conflict because chaos made you feel unsafe. And you may be extremely independent because asking for help once, twice, or thrice led to disappointment. You may be productive under pressure because peace feels unfamiliar. And you may know how to care for everybody else because nobody consistently cared for you. I'm sure you're emotionally strong because you learned early that there was no room for emotions, and all of those skills are real. They probably helped you survive. They may now make you exceptional at teaching and parenting and leadership and counseling and business, crisis management, ministry. But we have to be careful. A survival skill can become a valuable gift without becoming a lifelong obligation. Just because you know how to carry chaos does not mean you are called to live inside it, okay? Just because you can fix problems broken people have does not mean every broken person is your assignment. And because you can function without support does not mean you are supposed to. Yes, you're good at keeping the peace. That does not mean you should continue sacrificing truth to remain or maintain everybody else's comfort. A trauma-informed therapist might call some of this hypervigilance, people-pleasing, overfunctioning, or parentification. Parentification, that occurs when a child is required to take on emotional or practical responsibilities that should have belonged to adults. That child may grow into an extremely capable adult. I was extremely capable myself. Everybody admires how responsible they are, but nobody asks why they find it impossible to relax. Nobody asks why receiving help makes them uncomfortable. And nobody asks why they feel valuable only when somebody is in crisis. Competence can hide pain, and sometimes what looks like calling is an old wound repeating a familiar job. That is why healing matters in discernment. Because you want to know whether you're choosing something freely or whether your nervous system is choosing what feels familiar. Familiarity is not the same as purpose. Chaos can feel normal. Overwork can't feel normal. Being underappreciated can't even feel normal. Even rescuing people. But normal doesn't mean healthy. And it certainly does not always mean called. So I'll tell you right now, I had to learn to adapt really quickly as a teen mother and being vigilant by pushing through my adversities with such flair that most thought, shoot, she good, she's fine. I remember being so devastated because I had one credit left to receive my high school diploma. But because I was pregnant and I had to leave the program, I had to go to an adult school to get my GED. But I didn't stop there. I was determined to go back to school and get my degree. And I found a college campus that had a great program and a child care, which was an outstanding child care. And I was able to take my son and me to school every day, drop him off at child care on campus. And I think back like, man, I would wake up at 5 a.m. and take two buses, two, to get to school. It wasn't easy. And sometimes I look back and wonder, like, how did I do that? But all credit is to the Most High God. He brought me through always. See, because the question is not whether that strength was real. The question is whether it's still supposed to control your role. Maybe that skill helps you survive one season, and maybe it prepares you to help others. And maybe God will redeem it. But redemption does not always mean repeating the original environment. Sometimes God uses us or uses you for what you learned in the fire without requiring you to keep living in the fire. The competence trap can keep you successful and miserable. This is what psychologists and leadership experts sometimes describe as a competence trap. The better you become at something, the harder it is to leave, because now you have results, experience, reputation, money, a title, relationships, maybe even a whole identity connected to that role. Other people look at your life and say, "Ooh, honey, you're doing well." You may be thinking, "I don't even want to do this anymore." How many of you have been here? That creates confusion because we are taught that success is confirmation. If something is working, we must be doing it right. We assume it. If you're winning, we assume you should continue. But external success and internal alignment are not always the same. Research on person-environment fit helps explain this. People tend to function better when their values, needs, abilities, and environment align. You can have the ability to succeed in an environment that does not fit your values. You can perform extremely well in a culture that is slowly depleting you. You can make good money doing work that requires you to become somebody you do not respect. You can receive praise in a position that leaves no room for your family, your health, your faith, integrity, or creativity. That does not mean everybody should quit a stable job the moment work feels difficult. I'm not saying that, y'all. We're talking about that too, of course, but success alone is not proof of alignment. Some people are successful because they're disciplined. They can succeed almost anywhere. That is both a gift and a danger, because highly capable people can remain in misaligned places for a long time. They know how to adjust, perform, meet expectations, and know how to make the best of a bad fit. And because they are producing results, nobody sees the internal cost. Sometimes they don't even see it until the body starts speaking. Burnout, resentment, numbness, loss of creativity, constant irritability, especially if you're a family, a feeling of emptiness after accomplishments, a growing sense that your life belongs to everybody except you. You can become so good at carrying something that nobody notices is crushing you. And when you think about leaving, you feel foolish. Forget about it. Why would I walk away from something I'm good at? Why would I start over? Why would I disappoint people? Like, why would I never become this? What if I never become successful again like this? Those are real questions. But here's another one. What is success costing you? If maintaining the identity requires you to repeatedly betray your values, ignore your health, silence your spirit, or neglect your actual responsibilities. Is it success? Or is it simply high-level performance inside the wrong assignment? My whole life, I've been a singer and songwriter. I've been singing since I've been 3, writing since I've been like 10 or 11. And trust me, I'm very good at it. Always have been, I'm sure I always will be, because I still do exercises. I had the ability to be in the room with some of the greatest people that I've met and have been invited to speak on a panel for songwriters and recording artists that have won Grammys already. And here I am. I'm like, I just wrote some couple of songs. But it just shows how good I was. And the more I kept pushing further away, or the more I kept driving myself down that path, the more I kept being pushed further away. I was getting away from myself. And God chose me to choose a different path for me. And though I was great at the one I was on, that wasn't what he wanted for me. So I chose to walk away from all of it. Not once, not twice, not thrice, 5 times. That's how many opportunities I had gotten. Sometimes the bravest thing a competent person can do is admit, I could keep doing this, but I don't believe I'm supposed to. And that's where I had to come to, an understanding with. And my life isn't over. Whatever that looks like, we're still on this path. But ease does not prove calling, and difficulty does not disprove it. We misunderstand calling when we assume the right thing will always feel easy. People say, when you're walking in your calling, everything just flows. Sometimes it does. Sometimes doors open, the ideas come, people respond, resources appear, you experience peace and confirmation. That's exactly what I'm talking about. I experienced when I was on my path. But sometimes calling is difficult. Sometimes it requires training. Sometimes it exposes your insecurity. Sometimes it asks you to become disciplined in an area where you haven't relied on your talent. Maybe it sends you into a room where you feel completely unqualified. So difficulty does not automatically mean you're in the wrong place, and ease does not automatically mean you're in the right one. Sometimes or something may feel easy because you've done it for years. Your brain becomes more efficient through repetition. Neural pathways associated with familiar patterns become easier to activate. That fluency can feel like rightness, but sometimes it's simply familiarity. You know how to do it. You know what people expect. You know how to succeed. You know how to protect yourself. The familiar role requires less uncertainty. A new assignment may require more thought, humility, dependence, and courage. So your brain may say, "Oh, go back to what you know." It's okay to stretch ourselves. Not because it's your calling, but because it's predictable, and human beings like being predictable. They like predictability. So when your brain is saying, "Oh my gosh, go back to what you know," you're scared to stretch yourself because you like to be predictable. We often infer identity from repeated behaviors. I keep doing this. People keep rewarding me. I'm good at it. Therefore, this must be who I am. And why don't we connect with others' opinions of us to ourselves? I mean, that conclusion may be reasonable, but it's not conclusive. Think about Paul in Acts 16. Paul and his companions were capable of preaching everywhere. They were already doing the work, connected to their broader mission. Yet the Spirit redirected them away from certain regions and towards Macedonia. Their ability to preach did not mean every place they could preach was where they were to go. That's powerful, because some of us think, well, I'm gifted to do this, so every opportunity to do, it must come from God. No, and I'm not God. I'm not portraying myself to be. I just have noticed the patterns. The gift may be from God, but the timing still requires discernment. The location requires discernment. The audience requires discernment. The method, the season, they require discernment. You may be called to teach, but not at a school. You may be called to lead, but not at that organization. Called to serve, but not in every position. Called to speak, but not on every platform. Called to create, but not for every product. Right? We can be called to help at the expense of our own household. And sometimes the difficult new thing is where you are being led. Not because difficulty itself is holy, but because growth is often uncomfortable but necessary. There is a difference between the discomfort of development and the distress of misalignment. One stretches you, the other steadily erodes you. Discernment helps you tell the difference, which brings me to my next point. Calling is about service, character, and fruit. And that calling is bigger than personal fulfillment. We live in a culture that often talks about purpose as if it's mainly about finding the thing that makes you feel special, or find your passion, live your dream, do what lights you up. And desire matters. It does. Joy matters. Mhm. You shouldn't ignore what brings you alive. But a biblical understanding of calling is not only about self expression, it's about service, character, stewardship, and fruit. Romans 12 talks about gifts differing according to the grace given to us. But those gifts are described within a larger conversation about humility, service, and membership in one body. That the gift is not an independent command to maximize your personal success. It belongs within community. 1 Corinthians 12 says there are different gifts, but the same Spirit. It says the manifestation of the Spirit is given for the benefit of others. That means the question is not simply, what am I good at? It is also, what does this gift produce through me? Who benefits? Does this work heal, build, teach, protect, create, clarify, encourage, challenge, or serve? What kind of person am I becoming while I do it? Because you can be gifted and destructive. You can be talented and dishonest, and you can be effective and unloving. You can build something impressive while your character deteriorates behind the scene. Calling does not excuse character. Your gift may open a door that your maturity is not ready to sustain. And some of us are so focused on using the gift that we neglect the person carrying it. But God is not only concerned with what comes through your hands, He's concerned with what is happening in your heart. Does the path require you to become more truthful, loving, patient, courageous, responsible, more humble? Or is it mainly making you more impressive? Now that's a serious question. Because a platform can grow while a soul shrinks. I've seen that from a lot of my old influencers that decided to step away from the screen. They said, I'm done. A company can expand while a family collapses. I read a book, can't remember the name of it right now, but he said he makes sure he puts in his family time when he was building his company. A ministry can become successful while the leaders become unrecognizable. I've seen that in past churches that I was involved in. I don't recognize those leaders anymore and what they're teaching and who they are. I don't know what spirit was on them now. A gift can create public fruit and private damage. So when you're discerning calling, examine the whole harvest. What does this produce in others? And what does it produce in you? Now, fruit does not mean everything will always be pleasant. Truth can make people uncomfortable. What's the scripture? Do they hate me because I tell you the truth? Leadership requires hard decisions. Calling may involve sacrifice. But over time, does the work move you toward integrity? Or are you constantly required to violate what you believe in order to remain successful? See, I initially started this podcast because I wanted to share information behind why questions that I noticed most of us have within. I thought my podcast needed to look a certain way. But as I continue building this platform, I'm allowing myself to be led in the direction that God wants it, and that's good enough for me. Because, see, your calling is not only about what you're capable of producing, it is also about who you are becoming through your obedience. See, a calling can be real and still be seasonal. This is a point I think a lot of folks need to hear. Something can be a real calling for one season without being a permanent assignment. Ecclesiastes says, to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heavens. We sometimes think that changing direction means we were wrong before. If you leave teaching, you assume you were never called to teach. If you stop singing publicly, you think the gift was wasted. If you close the business, you believe you failed. Or if you step away from ministry, you question whether God ever led you there in the first place. But seasons do end. It doesn't make them false. A job may have been the right place for you for 10 years and become the wrong place in year 11. It happens. A ministry role may have taught you what you needed to learn, and a business may have provided resources, relationships, wisdom, or discipline for the next assignment. A season of caregiving may have required nearly all of your attention, and a season of motherhood may have changed what obedience looked like. And Lord knows, a season of grief, which is what I've definitely been going through, may have required you to move more slowly. A calling can have chapters, and the fact that a chapter ends doesn't mean the book was a mistake. That's freeing because some people remain trapped by old instructions. God told them to begin something, and they assume that means they can never stop. But beginning required obedience. Continuing also requires obedience, and sometimes ending does too. We have to stop worshiping permanence. Not everything meaningful is meant to last forever. Some people are called into your life for a season. I've always said that. Me and my friends always talk about that. Some responsibilities are preparation, and some opportunities are bridges, and some roles reveal gifts that will later be expressed in a completely different environment. You may think you wasted years because you are no longer doing the same work, but perhaps those years developed the patience, wisdom, leadership, communication, courage, or compassion required for what comes next. Bezalel in Exodus 31 is a beautiful example of skill and assignment conversion. See, because God filled him with wisdom, understanding, knowledge, and craftsmanship for specific work connected to the tabernacle. The skill had direction, there was an assignment, there was a purpose, there was a context. Now imagine if Bezalel decided that because he was gifted in craftsmanship that he had to accept every construction project offered to him for the rest of his life. But see, that's not what the passage says. The gift was used in service of a particular assignment. Your abilities may remain with you even when the assignment changes. You don't lose the gift because the season shifts. You may simply use it differently. A teacher may become a speaker. A singer may become a mentor, or a business owner may become an investor, a caregiver, or advocate. A person who once led publicly may be called into a quieter season of family, healing, writing, or preparation. The gift remains. It's expression that changes. I used to work in corporate America as an administrative assistant, executive assistant when I was younger. In that role, I wore so many hats. Honestly, I was the office manager, the accounts receivable girl, the part researcher, and I utilized so many of my skills because I was naturally gifted in learning quickly, recognizing patterns, and executing under pressure. This didn't mean I needed to stay there in order to exercise my gifts. They've come along with me and has continued evolving, just like with you. You're allowed to honor what was without forcing it to remain what is. Which brings me to my last and final point. Calling requires discernment, freedom, and obedience. It requires a wider discernment process, not just a skill, not just feelings, not just money, and not just praise. And for sure, not just opportunity or difficulty. You have to bring the whole picture together, all of it. So I want to give you a framework. The first question is ability. Am I competent to do this, or am I willing and able to become competent? Calling does not eliminate preparation. You may be called and still need training. You may have the heart but lack the skill. That does not necessarily mean no. It may mean not yet. Even though I heard a really good, not even though, but I heard a really good podcast a few years ago, and the lawyer, she said something so profound, and it stuck with me. She said, I may not be experienced, but I know I'm qualified. So take that with you, take it for what you may, because I don't believe, for me, I don't even believe in imposter syndrome. Second question is desire. Do I actually want the work? Not only the reward, not only the title, not only the applause, not only the lifestyle I imagine it comes with. Do I want the work itself? A lot of people want to be authors, but don't want to write. They want to be entrepreneurs, but they don't want to sell, manage, budget, or solve problems. And they want a platform, but they don't want the responsibility that comes with the influence. See, people want the outcome without the assignment. So ask yourself whether you want the real work or only the identity attached to it. The third question is fruit. What is this producing in me and through me? Does it bring life? Does it create value? Does it help people? Does it develop character? Or does it repeatedly produce chaos, dishonesty, resentment, vanity, or harm? Fourth question is service. Who benefits from this work? Calling is not always glamorous. Sometimes it looks like quietly serving people who will never know your name. Sometimes it looks like ordinary work done with extraordinary faithfulness. Do not assume calling has to be public to be important. The fifth question is character. Who do I have to become to carry this well? Does this path invite me to become more truthful and loving, or am I becoming obsessed with being impressive? The sixth question is confirmation. What do mature, honest people observe? Not people who are impressed by your talent, not people who benefit from keeping you in the role, people who love you enough to tell you the truth. People who have wisdom, people who can recognize both your ability and your blind spots. Community confirmation matters, but community should help you discern. It should not control you. The seventh question is cost. What does this assignment require me to surrender? Every meaningful yes includes a no. You may have to surrender comfort, status, income, approval, familiarity, control, or a version of yourself you worked hard to build. But be careful. Sacrifice alone does not prove calling. Some people believe that if something is painful, that it must be holy. So if I'm struggling, I gotta be doing holy. I'm doing the work because I'm struggling. No. Unnecessary suffering is not a badge of obedience. The question is whether the cost is connected and truthful in the assignment. The eighth question is season. Is this lifelong, temporary, preparation, or bridge? Is it responsibility for now? Who knows? You don't need to force a permanent answer when God has only given you the next step. I know he gave me a step. He said, let's go. The ninth question is freedom. Would I still believe this was mine to do without applause? If nobody clapped, if nobody called me gifted, if the title disappeared, if I could not post it, if it did not make me look important, would I still feel responsible for the work? That question reveals a lot. And finally, obedience. Am I following God, or am I asking God to approve an identity I have already chosen? Because sometimes we decide who we want to be and then go searching for confirmation. We don't want direction. We want endorsement in that case. We want God to sign a plan we already created, but calling requires surrender. It asks, who gets to interpret my gifts, my performance, or other people's praise, my desires, my circumstances, my fear, my bank account, or God? And sometimes the answer will involve all of those things. Your ability, desire, circumstances, wise counsel, opportunity, and service impact may all point in one direction. Calling does not always have to be mysterious. It does not always arrive in a dream. You don't have to hear thunder and see a burning bush before accepting a practical opportunity. Sometimes calling looks ordinary, and sometimes it's stable work that allows you to support your family, serve people well, and live with integrity. We shouldn't romanticize quitting good work simply because it feels familiar, and we should never ignore economic realities. Calling is easier to discuss when a person has choices. It is. Some people can't leave a job immediately. They have debt, children, medical needs, caregiving responsibilities, limited opportunities, discrimination, a difficult employment market, survival matters. Providing for your household matters. It's understandable. So the sermon should not become reckless. But always make sure that you're being led. Because even with all of that adversity in front of you, you may not see that God has something else on the other side of that, even when you're faced with all of what I just said. You may recognize that a job is not your long-term assignment and still remain there responsibly while preparing for what comes next. You can be called beyond something without being released from it today. Preparation is not disobedience. Planning is not a lack of faith. You don't have to burn down your present to prove you believe in your future. Sometimes obedience looks like staying for a time, and sometimes it looks like leaving. Sometimes it looks like learning, and sometimes it looks like waiting, and sometimes it just looks like admitting that the thing you do best is not the thing you're meant to give your whole life to. So let's bring all this home. Being good at something may be evidence of calling, but it isn't proof by itself. Talent is a clue, not a conclusion, and praise can reveal your gifts, but it can also build a cage. Some of your strongest abilities may have begun as survival skills. Success can keep you trapped in work that no longer aligns with your values or your assignment. Ease does not always prove calling, and difficulty does not always disprove it. Calling involves service, character, fruit, and the purpose behind the gift. A calling can be real and still be seasonal, and true discernment requires ability, desire, fruit, service, character, confirmation, cost, season, freedom, and obedience. So maybe the question is not only, what am I good at? Maybe the better question is, what is this gift for? Who is it meant to serve? What is it meant to produce? Where is it meant to be used? And what season am I actually in? Because you're more than the function people have assigned to you. You're more than the role your family needs you to play. And you're more than your job title. You're more than your most profitable skill. You're more than the thing that receives the most applause. You don't owe the rest of your life to get to every ability you developed along the way. Some gifts will become your vocation. Some will support your vocation. Some will protect you in a difficult season. Some will prepare you for something else. And some will serve your family, bless your community, and remind you that God placed more inside of you than one title could ever contain. So don't abandon your gifts, but don't worship them either. Let them be tools. Let God determine the assignment. Listen, I've heard him tell me, this is not what I want for you, or you won't be coming back here next year, or this is the location I want you to move to, just to name a few. I know about being obedient. And the fear, I don't want to say fear, but the nervousness, the anxiousness, but do it with faith. And do not confuse being useful to everybody with being obedient to the one who called you. So after this long-winded conversation, I'm going to leave y'all with this. Remember, y'all, question everything, starting with why. Because why is always the question. And I'm out.